you know, practicing your language and culture, you'll find that you will eventually be in all these different places, and that is with you. So it's actually securing that foundation on those different kahua as well. So with that, you know, so I think that's kind of breaking down that whole misconception that Olelo Hawaii is going to be a detriment to them. It's not going to give them the success that people think of as being successful, which is to be proficient in one language. But if you look on a global scale, if you are, you know, monolinguistic, that is very primitive. It's quite primitive.
And it's working on fear, I think. It's working on fear and value. And, you know, the language had been devalued over time.
Absolutely.
You know, as we become part, when we became part of, well, when we lost political control of our own country.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, the language had been devalued. So, you know, 20 years ago when they were trying to, you know, start this movement here, I think it was fear, and I think that is still prevalent.
Absolutely.
But it's only because we're looking so closely just at the Hawaii experience, you know, but when you look, again, at a global level, there are many languages. Most people speak more than one language. Learning one language doesn't inhibit the learning of another or another. And, you know, when you look at the world in a larger context, there are languages who have come from ground zero, just like us, and who now have 7 million, I mean, Hebrew has about, well, I think like 7 million speakers now. So, you know, and some people will say, well, is it even possible? Or, you know, whatever. Oh, yeah, it's possible. And it's been done, and here are all the examples. I think we as a people have to want it. You know, we have to want this. We have to sort of keep our eye on the prize. And I think sometimes, you know, when we're so close to it, we might falter. But it is. I mean, this movement is still so alive.
Absolutely.
And moving. You know, it is moving. It's increasing every day. And I think, you know, when I first started, you know, I was just hooked into the classroom. And then I went back to get training as a teacher. And you learn about language acquisition, and you learn about all of these things. And you know that those fears are just fears, and they're unfounded, and they're not true. And when you really, you know, when you watch these children develop these language skills, you know, I always tell people it's like magic. It's like magic. They jump in the class, they don't know anything, and, you know, in a few weeks they start saying words and then sentences, and, you know, in about 6 to 8 months, you can't tell that they, you know, they're new. And, you know, and then when you have your own kids and you get to watch that 24/7, you know, that it's like amazing. And even the idea about, I mean, my kids speak better English than I ever spoke, and I don't ever speak English to them, you know what I mean? But, so it's like, for me, it's like the better their Hawaiian is, the better their English is, and the better their English is, the better their Hawaiian is, and it's
a win-win.
Yeah,
it's a really win-win situation.
And you see that on a day-to-day basis.
Of course. Being an early childhood education teacher, I see that often. But I do have to say, going back from the beginning, I was raised in a time when both my parents spoke Olelo Hawaii, and only Olelo Hawaii in the home. And I had a grandmother that only spoke Hawaiian. She spoke no English. So I had a grandfather that spoke Hawaiian and English, and I had a grandmother that only spoke Hawaiian. And so given that foundation, and, you know, and I'm being raised with parents that really highly honor their language and the identity of who they are, wanted to make sure that that got passed on. I actually didn't learn it in grade school or middle school. I didn't learn it in high school because it wasn't offered during that time. And that was the real saddening thing for my parents. But in learning it in college is when I started. And my first teacher was, of course, Paul Kanehele. And I took language class over at UH Hilo. You know, that was the introduction for me. And I knew that there was some concepts to all of that was important. I had the iini and the desire to learn because for me, it's a connection for me to my parents and my grandparents. And it's helped me understand who I am and where I come from. So in acquisition and wanting to know the Hawaiian language was important for me.